Hey, Composing Gloves here. This is the 12th video in the Massive from the Ground Up tutorial series, and today we're going to be talking about the Filters tab. Filters are fundamental to sound design. They can act as EQ adjustments for you. Filters behave differently than an EQ, but I'm going to be using a parametric EQ to kind of show you what the shapes look like, because I'm a very visual learner, and that really helped me understand what filters were doing. Right off the bat, you open up a new sound, boom, and you will see that this is very distracting, this moving thing back there. All right. Okay. So you will see that you have your oscillator on. You've seen this 100 million times. Route everything to filter 1. We're just going to use filter 1 to demonstrate. Remember, filter 2 is on, but the wet dry slider is all the way off. So if you intend to use that, make sure you turn that on. But we're not going to be using that. So you have your on off as normal, and you can access the different filters through this menu, and the parameters of the knobs change according to what filter you select. So a low pass filter does exactly what it sounds like. It lets the low filters pass. And the reason there are two low pass filters is because there are different ways you can accomplish a low pass filter, and it becomes a whole mess, but I'll show you right down here. So first, I guess I'll show you what it sounds like. So that's low pass. You can see it rolls off the high frequencies till nothing but low frequencies are left. And what essentially is happening is we have this going on. Low pass. And boom, as you move it around, it changes. Now, if you wanted a different type of low pass, you would just change the steepness. And now it's a much sharper low pass. And so it'll cut frequencies off much more accurately. It won't let anything go off slightly. And that's pretty much the low pass mystery. That's what it does. Now, when I move this cutoff knob, it's changing where this value is at. And this is where resonance comes in. So really quick, a definition of resonance, or an example, is if you were to sit in a room with a guitar and you were to scream, you'd be letting out a whole bunch of frequencies through your scream. And whatever frequencies lined up with the frequencies that the guitar strings resonate at would cause the guitar strings to resonate, or it would cause the strings to move. And that's called resonance. And I'm sure you've seen this, where you start screaming or moving, and then all of a sudden something else in the room starts to move because it has some of those same frequencies in it. I totally recommend looking up filter design, DSP. It will get you places. And also look up resonance. Just really cool. The way they accomplish that digitally, though, is they accomplish it with using a feedback loop. And as we talked about in our last video, feedback loops can do all sorts of black magical things. So I'm just going to give you the down low on what it does. So you take a feedback loop, and essentially, as you're moving your cutoff value around, like so, it does this. And these two move in conjunction with each other. So if that moved, that would go with it. And that is all resonance does. And the reason that is because you're taking a signal that's in phase with itself, and that causes the gain to be doubled, the phase to be doubled. And so, or it adds the phase to each other. So that's the low pass. And most filters naturally have some resonance in them. It's like you hear the pitch kind of changes. So if you turn the low pass off, this essentially becomes like a volume knob. Now, the reason filters are different than EQ, and the reason why EQ is like a whole separate thing, is because filters have a much sharper volume cutoff. Like this goes down to negative 18 dB, which is actually pretty extensive for an EQ. But filters go down to negative infinity. So it kills your signal a lot more effectively. So that's what that does. And so we'll turn the resonance up, and you'll see that some frequencies are emphasized. See, that's where, because we have a whole bunch of resonance being sent in, a lot of that feedback loop's being let in. And that's where we've set our cutoff. It introduces that frequency there. It actually changes the pitch. So if you were to take this way down, you'd actually get a lower pitch than what you said. And with all the feedback loop being let in, it actually creates a second tone that's on an entirely separate pitch, but it's relative to where you put the cutoff. So it'll still fit in your signal. Like it's not like a separate, like it won't make your signal out of tune, if that makes sense. So that's what the resonance knob does in a nutshell. And it works the same for low pass too, which we discussed is just a different sharpness probably. And the high pass works in the opposite direction. It's basically like a low pass on the other side. And it is the exact same principle. It only lets high frequencies pass, rolls off the low first. So, and in this scenario, this side is actually the low pass. The high pass is not on. In this scenario, high pass is on. And resonance works the same way. So that's the high pass. The high pass 2 is probably just, sounds like it's just a different steepness. Oh, see, when it's all the way on, it's a lot less steep. And because if this is all the way on, there ain't nothing getting through. Okay, now let's move on to the all pass. All pass, what it does with now it can introduce resonance and feedback too, but wherever you put the cutoff, it's inverting the phase. So pay attention to the oscilloscope. So we have, right now, it's not on. We have a sine wave, and as we turn it on, it's going to invert our signal, and it doesn't phase cancel the signal. It inverts the phase, and it doesn't phase cancel because it's not adding in the inverted phase. It's taking that signal and inverting it, so there's nothing for it to cancel against. So I'll just watch. You'll see because it's inverted, you'll see the saw wave start to point the other direction. And that's what that does. And you might be wondering, like, why the heck am I ever going to use that? Trust me, as you get into sound design and you want creativity options and knowing what this stuff does, you could do some really interesting things, especially in conjunction with all the different kinds of modulations types you were just talking about. It'd be really interesting to do something with that, with ring modulation and pitch. And then if you tossed filter FM, I mean, who knows what would happen. So that's what that does. And you can add resonance in. Now, I'm not totally sure if resonance is phase inverted with the original signal or with the feedback loop. I don't know, but it makes sense that it would be. Otherwise, I believe it would cancel out. So now we have the double notch filter. And the way the double notch filter works is on this, it'd be called the band stop. So you see it lets everything except this area through, and you can change the width of this like so. Now you can't do that on this particular double notch, and it's called double notch because there are two of them, 2 notch filters. And we'll go ahead and take a look. I believe they're about this far apart and they move in unison with each other. So if we look at our spectrograph here, and if we turn our double notch on, you see the 2 notches. There's one right there and one right there. And it applies a negative cut in dB. It reduces the volume of those areas, wherever these guys are. And you can add in resonance once again. Now, I'm not sure where the resonance is actually being introduced on this one. I think it may be just in between the 2 bands because it looks like the middle is being emphasized. So yeah, that's what I think about that. All right, and if you don't, by the way, this is how phasers work, or the general principle of phasers when we get into that. And now we're going to talk about, so that's the bandpass. No, we just talked about the double notch. Here's the bandpass. So this is the bandpass, and it works like this. And we're going to change this back so it doesn't mess with anything real quick. Peaking. Type. I don't know. Oh, it's the number 1. Okay. Okay, so it looks just like that. Okay. Only the frequencies where this band are the ones that are being let through. And you can change the width of this band. And so a lot more frequencies or a lot less. And that's all that this does. And you can change the bandwidth. So you see it's letting through. And you can also add feedback in this. Another interesting thing. Make the bandwidth bigger. And now the size of your bandwidth, I believe it's called the Q ratio. If you go reading about it and you see this like Q letter everywhere, that's what that is. Because when I was reading about this, the only reason I knew about it was because I had an instructor who told me that's what that was. So, now we're going to talk about the band reject. Okay, so first I'll play it for you. And I'll turn the resonance off. So it effectively is just a a specialized volume knob. Okay, so we notice that wherever we set the cutoff, and then we move this, it creates, so this creates the motion sort of. They both create motions. And how is this working? Well, if we get 2 band passes going here, oh, not a band stop, a band pass. Okay, so we have 1 band pass, and let's say we want it pretty thin. So this is our bandwidth right here. So we're changing the width of our band like so. And then this one, let's say this is our cutoff. Okay, so this is a second band pass. But then you see here, the two, when they overlap, they create the band pass. And so even though our band might be moving and stuff, if it's not where ours is, it's rejected, thus called band reject. Now, this is just a theory I have based on the observations I've made, because they don't like say this is how it works. But I'm pretty sure this is what it's doing. So it would make sense with a bigger envelope that the cutoff would do a lot more than with a smaller bandwidth. I mean, a smaller bandwidth. And you can have resonance, of course, which messes with those feedback loops. Then you have scream. So these are specialized feedback loop options. And what it does is it changes it. So the cutoff works basically like a low pass filter, but the scream affects the feedback that's your resonance. Sounds like it's this, you know what, I'm not going to say anything because I don't have an official, I haven't really thought about this too much yet. But yeah, that's what's happening. The scream is affecting the resonance, and it's changing the pitch of your sound, or the pitch of the resonance. But again, the resonance is being introduced into your spectral content. So it doesn't make your note out of tune. It just changes the emphasis of the spectrum. So some interesting options there, commonly used in dubstep. Daft is a specialized low pass filter. Again, resonance behaves differently. The feedback loop algorithm is different. So you have our low pass. And because you can hear the resonance is quite more pronounced, so they recommend actually using it with the filter FM. They say that it is more responsive just because of the nature of the algorithm they wrote. And so that's the DAF filter. Comb filters are something else entirely. So, but they have, so what this is changing is it's changing the feedback. And I actually, I believe this is the most straightforward one because it's labeled pitch, dampening, and feedback. If this was labeled low pass, it would be so straightforward. But they don't do things like that these days. So this is changing the pitch of the feedback, which we just discussed about how it's introduced into your spectral content. So it doesn't make your note out of tune. And it's changing, and this is dampening the feedback. So it acts as a low pass filter to your feedback. See? Rolling it off. And that's what the comb filter does. And then the last one is acid. And it's just another one with a different feedback type and a special low pass type. And that sound, that kind of like whiny sound, is typical of what in ye old days was called acid sounds. Or they were named like acid. I don't know why. Okay, that's just the way it was. And that's pretty much it about filters. Go mess around with filters. To use these effectively, you pretty much just have to mess with them and get a feel for what they do. Like my Facebook page, subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, and share these videos with someone who's learning massive, like in a group on Reddit or something. Be like, hey, bros, this is like, or girls, this is like the best massive tutorials ever. Or you could say like, hey, this guy's pretty good at massive, or you could say he's the worst at massive and you could troll all over me. Whatever you want to do. It's free country. So yeah, thank you and have a blessed day.